Are you an entrepreneur or looking to become one? Looking to stay motivated, find happiness and true success? You're in the right place. Welcome to Empower Humans.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Empower Humans podcast. Please give us your feedback. Communicate with us through email. We've mentioned this in other episodes. Also our social media at Empower101 on Instagram and Twitter, and even audio messages through Anchor, the podcasting app Anchor. We really want to connect with our audience, and we would love for you to rate and review our podcast as well. We've already been getting some great reviews, so thanks for that. We have some great interviews coming up with New York Times bestselling author of Essentialism, Greg McKeown, for one, a head animator at Sony Pictures Animation. They do Hotel Transylvania movies and tons of others. We'll be interviewing many others in the business and entertainment landscape. I have some other interviews and things in the works that I won't even tell you about yet until I get them cemented and scheduled. But there's a lot of exciting things coming up, so buckle your seatbelt. We talked last time in episode 11 about enjoying the journey by finding all the good things to build upon, which are present in everyday life experiences, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. I heard Michael Richards, who played Kramer in the 90s, he talked about how he kind of wished he would have enjoyed himself more and just done it for the love of the audience. Instead, he said, looking back when he was playing that role, he said he was more selfish and obsessed with perfecting the character. In other words, he wasn't balanced with his motives and could have found more joy in the journey by having a stronger why connected to what he was doing. So go back and listen to that same topic in episode 11 about enjoying the journey, as well as other great content, some interviews in the other episodes. Today we're going to talk about our gifts. And when I say gifts, obviously that implies that they were given somehow, some way, regardless of all your belief system and mine. Gifts mean by default inherently that it was given somehow. But for purpose of this, it's going to be our talents. It's going to be things that we uncover to be our best selves and to contribute in the best way possible in our lives and to find our greatest, deepest joy and happiness. And regardless of what you or I may believe about religious or spiritual matters or God, the concept of gifts is very universal because we are all different, just like our belief systems might be. Being different means having different talents, strengths, weaknesses. The key here is finding the gifts or the strong talent areas and building on those to create kind of our own individual best positive impact on the world. And I heard Howard Stern talking in kind of an interview about how he got into radio, and one of the things he said was that when he was a kid, his dad would shush him from talking, in the house or especially in the back seat of the car. It sounded like Howard Stern felt like he wasn't really listened to or appreciated. And he realized that he had to get into that little box called the radio in order to get his father's attention. Consider that. Now, how does that relate to you and me? One of the things I've observed about gifts and talents is that they oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes somehow connect to some void or difficulty in our lives. There's a perspective gained through certain struggles, or in Howard Stern's case, maybe lack of attention from his dad. Everyone seems to have some sort, not everyone, but a lot of people have some sort of little qualms about the way they were raised or something about attention and different things that may have gone wrong when they were kids. So such was the case with good old Howard Stern. But we've talked in the past about black holes and how they create a vacuum of space as stars collapse in on themselves. And the universe forces that vacuum to be filled. As we've also discussed, the universe demands balance by filling it. Sometimes the things in our lives that have caused us hurts or pains or created these voids of some sort are kind of like those vacuums that we then fill. Some of the people who have risen up to be great leaders or philanthropists or just make a great impact in the world, some of those people have had to endure various types of difficulties and struggles. Most of them have. Now, I'm not saying Howard Stern has necessarily made some great impact or not, but I think his story speaks to the concept of how some of these things are created within us. It was certainly instrumental in creating a trajectory in his life. Instead of looking at our struggles with disdain, maybe we can look deeper to what they mean for the greater good of the outcome of our lives, as we develop gifts that sometimes, oftentimes, come through struggles. Now, can you imagine if we all had the same exact gift or gifts? What if we were all just good at cooking, for example? Now, I know I am because I was the grill operator at Waffle House when I was 17. True story, and a small joke, but great food at the Waffle House. And we're not sponsored by the Waffle House, but I digress. Maybe we can be. But what if we were all just good at that one thing? it underscores the value of uniting as human beings, kind of a human unit, if you will, in valuing the differences between us and building upon them. Now, I know Stephen Covey talked about that in terms of relationships, learning to value the differences. He asked a couple who were going through some hard things, how did you have kids? And they say, oh, well, of course you know how we did that. And he says, well, you valued the differences. And that's something about a relationship, but we can do that collectively as a greater kind of a collective group of humanity as well. So when we talk about valuing the differences, and we talk about if we were all good at cooking, like me at the Waffle House, who would build other technology like, what we're using right now to make, distribute, listen to this podcast and other content through the internet, for example? Who would build other products like clothing and TVs and makeup and cars? Everyone has abilities and talents to contribute all sorts of different things that we can all value, relate to, share as maybe an interdependent group. I like the word interdependent, by the way. We can be an interdependent group on this small planet of common ground that we share called Earth, which again is a small speck of the universe. We must unite here. We got to be more united as human beings, it seems to me. Now, the great comedian, entertainer, host, Steve Harvey, he talks about how everyone who obtained some measure of success had to jump. I listened to one of his books, Act Like a Success, Think Like a Success. We talked briefly about that in another episode. I think it was episode 6 when we were with Leo Cannell. Now, I've heard Will Smith talk about this as an analogy from when he went skydiving in Dubai. Everything we want is on the other side of fear, the other side of terror, he said. The greatest things in life are on the other side of terror. And this all ties back to the gifts, by the way. Back to what Steve Harvey was saying. He said that we have to identify the things that we are good at and that we love to do. He said sometimes we stand back on the cliff of life and watch others soaring and doing amazing, incredible things. We wake up in the morning not, in the best state of mind, perhaps. Oftentimes we know that maybe there's more to life than our current moment. We have to really believe that first. And he makes a point of saying that. You have to believe that there's more. And there is, by the way. I promise you that. And in order to get those things out of life, though, we have to jump. Okay? In order to soar, we have to jump. In order to succeed and find our fullness of happiness, we have to jump. And there's a liberating process that happens in that moment of clarity and surrender and leap of faith, if you will. Steve Harvey goes on to say that these people are living in their gift, the people who jump and soar. He says that it's written that your gift will make a room for you. It will make room for you to accomplish whatever your gift is, to fulfill it, to develop it. The gift opens up and provides the soar after you jump. He says that if you don't ever use it, you'll just go to work. You end up just going to work on a job every day that you just want to do. That isn't living. Now, that's him talking. I'm not saying people just work in some what might be considered average job or aren't living a great life, but it's up to each individual to decide what that is individually. I'm just throwing some principles out there. But when we're talking about developing gifts, I love a lot what Steve Harvey has to say, and it's worth maybe trying to take to heart and consider what that might mean in your own particular world, because we're all in kind of a different situation. So when he talks about that isn't living, again, the only way to see what living is like, he says, you got to jump. He goes on to explain how it won't be easy. The parachute doesn't open right away. You'll get banged up maybe on some of the rocks, torn up in other kinds of ways. But he also says that eventually that parachute will open. But if you play it safe, he says, if you don't ever jump, that parachute will also never open. And you'll never know what was available for you. And this all ties back to what we said in our first episode, in the first of the 7 pillars of joy and happiness, about living below our privileges. Are you living below your privileges right now? Are you awake from the sleepwalking that so many kind of get stuck in sometimes during their lives? Again, I've been there. Steve Harvey has more to say at the end of this. He says, he basically tells us, do yourself a favor. Before you're done in this life, jump. Jump at least one time. See what was really available to you. And even if you have bills and all these other reasons and excuses and credit and the things to worry about, we all have that kind of stuff. You're going to have those things whether you jump or not. So you might as well jump. I'll tell you this, I am jumping with this podcast. This is all part of a large master plan of positive impact on humanity. And I ask you, what is your master plan and what is your gift? And as we talk about that, I know different people are different levels of clarity about who they are as a person and what they're good at and what that gift might be. Let's talk about how to determine that. Deepak Chopra talks about some of these things through his website, chopra.com. There's an article on there called Self-Worth, 5 Ways to Identify Your Unique Gifts. The number one thing is a question. How did you love to spend your time as a child? What were the things you enjoyed most doing? And what activities were exciting for you? So think about that. Number 2 is another question. What are you passionate about as an adult? What are the things that really fill you, make you feel alive? If you're doing something that makes you lose track of time, what was it? I know sometimes I had that when I was recording music and doing things as a kid. I've talked before about being a musician. I lost track of time. Before you know it, several hours go by with something like that. Now, that is all part of number 2. Number 3 is another question. What is important about life for you? Now, it might help to categorize different areas of life, like our health, career, spirituality, family, personal relationships, etc. We talked about 10 areas of our lives to maintain balance in episode 1, probably about 7 to 10 minutes into that episode. So go back and listen to that if you want some ideas, and list all the things that are most important in those areas to you. This will give you an idea of your values kind of broken down by categories. When you combine them all, they represent your life values, what is most important to you. And this shows what is most important at an unconscious level too, and can lead to finding your gifts and your passion as well. They have a Strengths Finder assessment on their website that he also recommends, which is the 4th of the 5 ways to identify your unique gifts. So you can go there to chopra.com. And the last thing I think is very important, which is to ask people closest to you. Ask the people, your family, your friends, your coworkers, for example. They suggest in the article maybe thinking of 5 people, have them identify 1 or 2 things. Maybe you can identify 1 or 2 things that they're good at first, kind of do them a favor. They can, in turn, share with you what qualities they see as being your strengths. In the last little section of that article, it says the following quote, "Take some time now to contemplate the words and phrases that came about from your self-reflection and inquiry," because they talk about kind of then, once you've done those 5 steps, having kind of a self-assessment. And it goes on to say, what things stand out for you as being your gift or strength? I once heard a woman who didn't know what her special gifts were. When I asked what she enjoyed doing most, she replied with dancing. She wasn't going to win any awards for her dancing skills, but she loved it and absolutely came alive when she danced. Through a similar exercise, she came up with the idea to start a business of taking international group tours to different countries to learn about cultural dance. It's her passion. It's her purpose. And she knows she matters in the lives of the people who travel with her and the lives of the people who get to share their culture and her clients, their culture with her clients. At the end of the day, I'm reading a section from this article. This is the last part. At the end of the day, who you are, what you do, and how you show up in the world is special and unique. Everything you share, whether it's your bright smile, your compassionate heart, your sharp intellect, or your quality of presence, has a ripple effect on everyone around you and beyond. You see, it turns out you do matter. You matter in more ways and on more days than you could ever possibly imagine. Whoever you are and whatever you do, the world needs you. When you think big, show up, bold, and share your uniqueness, you become a role model for all of us. End quote. Now, as we wrap up here, I want to reiterate to you that I know that all of us have gifts, and if you're not aware of that, or you're maybe unclear as to what that means in your life, you can find out. Take some of those steps we talked about. Ask people. I love the idea of asking people around us, because I think most of us have people around us, and we're going to talk a little more about that in the next episode as well. Find your gift. Figure out what jumping would be and take that jump. Okay, we talk about challenges at the end. This is one of our extra challenges this week, or right now with this particular podcast. Well, once you take that jump and you find out what that jumping would mean, even though you may be battered a little bit or a lot at first. You know, I know my wife's been battered. She took a jump to be a makeup artist, and all that has entailed for her. All these things, you may be battered, but your parachute of your gift will open if you persevere. I promise you that. And again, in our next episode, we'll talk more about patient perseverance through accomplishing certain things, creating goals and all that kind of stuff. But really the idea of being patient, perseverant. I've got some great stories to share with you on the next episode also. And just like in these other episodes, I want to reiterate some of our key challenges kind of as a common thread in each episode. Keep studying. There's light, there's joy, there's knowledge to be had in studying, learning whatever it is you want to learn, positive, valuable principles that bring light to your life. This all might tie to your gift situation, and then you can find even more passion in doing that. So keep studying, or as I've mentioned before, start studying. People don't always do that in life. People stop reading books, even if it's fiction books, but studying, reading, learning, audiobooks. I love audiobooks, by the way, because it's such an efficient way to learn and grow and hear something inspirational. So all kinds of opportunities, all kinds of resources. Now, the second of those extra challenges, beyond what we said about finding your gifts, making your jump, you keep studying, also make great moments. You know what that means in your life. Find the people that matter to you. Do things. Go the extra mile. Make great moments. Get surprise gifts. Make holidays coming and going matter for the people in your lives. And maybe people who haven't quite mattered as much can matter more by, here's this surprise for this coworker that maybe you're kind of an acquaintance, but you can actually create a great moment that way as well. Family members, people who are struggling, look for people who are struggling, people who feel lonely, all these sorts of things. Make great moments. And by the way, when you do that, you're going to find that some of the burdens you feel will be alleviated greatly. You'll feel fantastic, indescribably fantastic. And the last thing, let's continue doing this podcast together. Okay, so I invite you to do all those things. I know you've got great gifts, and I know you've got some great things to contribute. And I look forward to maybe hearing some of your stories as you communicate with us and send us some of those things through the Anchor app, through email, and our social media, Empower 101 on Instagram. So until next time, empower yourself, empower the world around you.
Thanks so much for listening to Empower Humans. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review this podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit empowerhumans.com. We'll catch you next time.